All right, I'm now going to read my drosha. So, if you didn't know, our Torah portion is the story of Noah. I'm sure we all know the story. God is furious at mankind and decides to punish us by flooding the earth, leaving only one family and two of each animal alive, left floating on an ark for over a year. Now, in previous times, we could only imagine what this would feel like, to be stuck inside for over a year. But I'm sure nowadays we can all think of one example. Lockdown ground the world to a halt, stranding people on their own arks, some completely solitary from other people. And indeed, it took a massive toll on everyone, physically and mentally. Without access to gyms or sport facilities, many people's physical health seriously deteriorated. But mostly, lockdown showed us that the most mentally stable people, who had never had any history of mental health issues, could be plunged into depression and anxiety by simply being made to stay inside. A spokesperson for Mind even described it as a mental health pandemic. Throughout these 2 years, the news has been dominated by statistics about coronavirus deaths and cases, but what is less known are the details of mental health. For instance, a study showed that 85% of people said that the coronavirus pandemic negatively affected their mental health. I'm sure that every person in this room or on Zoom knows or has known someone who has struggled with their mental health. I find that many people dismiss these issues because they're just in your head. Dr. Esther Altman, a Jewish clinical psychologist, said that mental health in Hebrew is known as machalat hanefesh, illness of the soul. I quite like that definition. It certainly doesn't reflect our scientific understanding of the brain, but it captures the essence of what it means to struggle with mental illness. Personally, I believe that for my generation, the implications of the coronavirus pandemic have been far greater for mental health than physical. I've seen many of my friends come out of lockdown with seriously damaged mental health. But for every single one of them who actually contracted COVID-19, including myself, came out of it no worse physically than before. Now, I'm obviously not dismissing the devastating effect the virus has on people physically, but I just believe that more attention needs to be paid to people's mental well-being, even though lockdown is over. This is why we chose to raise money as our social action project for Mind Nottinghamshire, which is a local mental health charity. They help to counsel and support people with mental health issues, which we thought linked in quite nicely with our portion, as well as being extremely relevant right now. And in fact, that said social action project happens tomorrow. Daniel, Jacob, Sarah, and I will set out tomorrow from Leicester Progressive Synagogue to cycle roughly 35 miles back to our synagogue. We have a Just Giving page set up, and it's in the link on the Zoom, it's in the chat of the Zoom if you would like to donate, and it will be much appreciated, no matter how small the amount. As you will have gathered, our parasha was centered around the story of Noah, and whether it was a cartoon in primary school, a story here at Hayder, or a video you found on the internet, I'm sure you all understand the basic story. However, albeit a very simple story, there are many aspects that can be questioned on further inspection. One of these was it fair that God punished a lawless world by bringing about a devastating flood on humanity at the time? Our portion clearly shows the extent of this punishment, with verse 13 saying, "I've decided to put an end to all flesh, for the earth is filled with lawlessness." This clearly shows that God mercilessly wanted to put an end to all humanity as a result of the world's lawlessness. But this can be seen as God causing unnecessary suffering. And if believed by the Torah is to be omnipotent, surely God would be able to fix the problems of the world without killing the majority of humanity. To paraphrase Rabbi Rachel Isaacs, God wanted humanity to fix the problems they had created. And since he were unable to do so, he used his omnipotence to wipe out everyone. But yet again, isn't this considered as an extreme punishment for something not too problematic? There are many other examples of extreme punishment for smaller crimes. For example, stealing a loaf of bread in the medieval times would lead to public torture and even potentially death. In terms of more recent examples, the punishment for stealing in Saudi Arabia has been documented as having a hand cut off. Moreover, capital punishment is still in practice in many countries, including more developed ones such as certain states in the US. And in most cases, this punishment is clearly too severe for the crime committed, as a life sentence in prison would probably be better. In some cases, criminals who receive this death penalty are even innocent. So I believe there are still many examples of extreme punishment for something not too troublesome. But back to the question, is it fair that God punished a lawless world by bringing about a devastating flood on humanity? This question actually links back to challenge, as the people at the time of the story in Noah
and equally in current times, experiencing this punishment must have and must still feel challenged in the form of anything they do wrong will be punished badly. In my opinion, God's punishment on these people was not justifiable. Although they broke some of the laws, they shouldn't have been punished by having a flood brought upon them. However, I will leave you on one final thought. As the prayer book says, suffering is part of life, and even among us there may be some who carry heavy burdens of past or present and struggle to fend off despair.
Hello everyone, I hope you're enjoying the service so far. In our Torah portion, we talk about Noah and his oh so magical ark, with two of each different animal present on board. You can imagine that Noah would have felt very lonely during this time, and I'm sure that's how many of you would have felt throughout the lockdowns, when the only time you would see your friends would be on a Zoom or FaceTime, when the only time you would be going out would be for an hour of exercise, plus a small stoppage to talk to my grandparents in my case. I think this feeling of loneliness is perfectly explained in your prayer book on page 288 when it says, "These are the times when we all feel lost or alone, adrift or forsaken, unable to reach those next to us or to be reached by them." Now, we can all relate to this feeling of loneliness, and that is how someone feels when they are discriminated against. This can be the form of sexism, racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, or Islamophobia. As a Jew myself, I've had to put up with my fair share of hatred, as I'm sure we all have. And it's not easy, and you do feel alone. And as the prayer book says, we Jews have often been victims of such stereotyping, and we have, and again, it does make you feel alone. But to move back to my earlier point, there was one time in lockdown when you did not feel alone, when everyone came together to fight for a cause. This was during the Black Lives Matter protests. This was when everyone came together because the discrimination against Black people was simply not acceptable. I can't tell you what it's like to be discriminated against because of the color of your skin, but for those that have, I feel you. And I hope that one day we will all be equal. Because at the end of the day, we are all different, but we are also all the same. We all have a heart, a pair of lungs, a liver, a brain. Some of us at least. God created all people. He loves all people the same. So why can't we? I'm going to end this Droshas on a quote. Before God, we're all equal. So why on earth can we not all be equal?